Have you ever seen this before? Is that Chinese KungFu? Why on earth is Chinese elderly so good at this? Hi Scarlett, welcome back to my channel. Today we're gonna figure out the mystery behind Chinese elderly's obsession towards exercising in public. To figure this out, we need to go back to the Qing dynasty. In the 16th century, the Portuguese became aware of the lucrative trade of opium into China. By 1729, the Yongzheng Emperor had criminalized the new recreational smoking of opium. Nevertheless, the decree had little effect. In the 1820s, the Chinese emperor issued a further edict. He wrote, "Opium has a harm. Opium is poison. The undermining of good customs and morality. Its use is prohibited by law. Now the commoner, young, dares to bring it into the forbidden city." Shortly afterwards, British and American merchants joined the opium trade. By 1838, there were millions of Chinese opium users. The public health of Chinese people had become a serious problem. More and more Chinese people were smoking British opium, while many people who stopped ingesting opium suffered from nausea, cramps, and sometimes died from withdrawal. In 1839, the Special Imperial Commissioner Lin Zexu destroyed the confiscated opium, a total of some 1,000 lung tons, a process which took 23 days. China's crackdown on the use of opium clashed with Britain, which advocated for free trade. This led to the infamous Opium War, which resulted in unequal treaties with various Western powers. The Opium Wars, according to Chinese historians, represented the start of China's century of humiliation, followed by the death of the Qing dynasty and the Sino-Japanese War. In 1896, the British-run North China Daily News published an article stating there are 4 sick people of the world: Turkey, Persia, China, and Morocco. China is the sick man of the East. The famous phrase, sick man of East Asia, then was adopted by Chinese thinkers who aimed to reform the Qing government. Liang Jichao, Chinese political activist, in his 1902 New People First, associated sick man with the physical health of the Chinese people, which was then afflicted by opium addiction, linking it to China's inability to defend itself militarily. The term gradually became seen as a way in which the Westerners were mocking, humiliating, and insulting Chinese people. In an essay by Chen Duxiu in New Youth, it wrote, "Whenever I look at our educated youth, I see that they have not the strength to catch a chicken. With pale faces and slender waists, if the people of our country are as feeble as this in body and mind, how will they be able to shoulder burdens and go far?" It was not until the Mao Zedong government took over China that Opium China was finally eradicated in the 1950s. Meanwhile, Mao highly encouraged people to get fit through exercise. In Mao's study of physical education, he concluded that the Chinese should adopt a regime of savage and rude exercise to build up their fighting spirit. Mao pointed out that Chinese students disliked physical education because they were not convinced of its value after the long-standing Chinese cultural preference for literary over military accomplishments. For Mao, it was time to change this, and he insisted that A. Exercising needs to be done regularly. This in itself creates interest and gives rise to the feeling of a well-being. And B. Exercise must be done with full concentration. And C. Exercise must be savage and rude. With Mao's guiding ideology of health first, academic studies second, workers started to run together in the mornings. Factories and schools organized various sports activities. At schools, gymnastic exercises were introduced in the 1950s. This was when the Chinese morning exercise elderly we found in parks now were born. In 1952, the PRC competed at the Olympic Games for the first time at the Summer Games in Helsinki, Finland. Unfortunately, from 1958 to 1965, school PE went through a difficult time owing to the Great Chinese Famine. In 1966, China, which had not fully recovered from the Great Chinese Famine, confronted the national upheaval of the Cultural Revolution. Affected by the chaos, PE classes were replaced by military PE classes that only centered on military trainings. It was not until 1984 that Xu Haifeng won the first gold medal in shooting for China at Olympic Games. As of 2022, China has finished first in the Summer Olympics once, second 3 times, third twice. With the nation's 11th appearance at the summer, China is the 5th most successful country in Olympics history. The 1950s generation grew with Mao's emphasis on physical education, went through the difficult times of the Great Famine and the Cultural Revolution, suffered from international humiliations based on their physical weaknesses, and witnessed China's rise in Olympic Games. That's probably why they think particularly highly of physical development and treasure their hard-won opportunities of exercising in public. Psychologically, is there anything particular about exercising in public for the 1950s generation? The German social critic Siegfried Kracauer, who was disturbed by the new form of mass aesthetic entertainment during the dying years of the Weimar Republic, wrote his famous essay, The Ornament of the Masses, in 1927. Kracauer compared the Nazi rallies with the theater girls, or the rows of well-drilled girly dancers who filled TV screens at the time, calling them the Mass Ornament. Kracauer suggested that people saw some vaguely transcendent meaning in the mass participation and mass belonging, and for that, they were prepared to sacrifice their individuality without noticing. So, the very concept of the mass was also believed to be the asceticization of politics under fascism. Kracauer saw happening in the 1920s was the creation of an illusion whereby the mass of people would see themselves as integrated into the system. Looking back at the collective sports exercises in the 1950s China, does it remind you of the mass ornament of the theater girls? Presumably, collective exercise fulfilled a basic emotional human need to belong to a collective and celebrate that belonging for Chinese people who had been through more than 100 years of invasion, colonization, isolation, and humiliation. Sigmund Freud developed a topographical model of the mind, whereby he described the features of the mind structure and function. Freud used the analogy of an iceberg to describe the 3 levels of the mind. According to Freud, the unconscious mind is the primary source of human behavior. Like an iceberg, the most important part of the mind is the part you can't see. So the unconscious fear of being left out embedded in Chinese people's unconscious resulted from the traumatic corruption of the late Qing government, and the brutal invasion of Western powers led to the obsession towards highly organized mass life, which provides them a strong and arguably illusory sense of security and power. Until now, the 1950s generation, who are used to mass lives, still like going to exercise in public parks with their peers, unconsciously forming a mass ornament and feeling included in an imagined system without even knowing it themselves. Meanwhile, as the internal migration of China becomes increasingly expansive since the 1980s with the rapid economic growth of China, more and more people leave their hometowns and families. This somehow makes lots of retired elderly feel left out and isolated, and thus they go to public parks and meet people alike, making friends to form new social connections. Day after day, these elderly people have developed some impressive KungFu, exercising like the martial art masters in Chinese films. But do you know how can one actually learn Chinese martial arts? How Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan do it in films? Why a tiny man can defeat hundreds of people, and is this even true? Please like and subscribe to my channel. I'll figure it out next time.